The morning was cold and a little windy when Clara stepped down from the train platform, her small boots touching the dusty ground of the western town for the first time. She was a mail-order bride, carrying only one brown suitcase, a folded letter, and a quiet hope that life might finally be kind to her. She had traveled for days, leaving behind a life of loneliness, and now she was here to meet the man who had written to her with gentle words and promises of a peaceful home. But the man she expected to meet was nowhere in sight. People hurried around with boxes, horses, and wagons, while Clara stood with her letter pressed in her hand. She looked around, wondering if she had come on the wrong day, but the letter clearly said the date. As she stepped closer to the street, she noticed a small commotion at the far end of the station. A wagon stood still, and beside it were 3 small children, 2 girls and 1 boy, hugging each other with tired faces. The youngest girl wore a dress that looked old and torn at the bottom. The boy's shoes had holes, and the older girl tried to look brave even though her eyes were swollen and red. Clara watched them for a moment, trying to understand what was happening. Then she saw the man who stood behind them. His clothes were dusty, his hat was old, and his hands looked rough from hard work. He was tall but tired-looking, like someone who had not slept in days. He had the children close to him, one hand resting on the boy's shoulder as if he needed to protect them with all his strength. Clara did not know why, but something in her heart pulled her closer. She walked toward the wagon, carrying her suitcase in one hand. And as she got closer, she heard the older girl whisper to the man, "Papa, can we stay here for a little? I'm tired." The man bent down and nodded gently, brushing her hair back with his rough fingers. "Just a bit longer, sweetheart. I'm trying to figure out where we go next." Clara stopped a few steps away. The man looked up, surprised to see a stranger staring at them. For a moment, Clara forgot about the missing groom who was supposed to pick her up. She just felt a sudden worry for these children and their father. She asked softly, "Are you all right?" The man straightened his back. "We're fine, ma'am," he said quickly, as if he had said that sentence too many times already. "Just passing through." But Clara could see they were not fine. The children had no bags, no blankets, nothing that showed they had a place to stay. She glanced at the wagon. It was nearly empty except for a broken basket and a blanket that looked too thin for the cold nights ahead. Something inside her tightened, and she felt a mix of concern and frustration at how the world could be so hard on some people. "What happened to you?" she asked gently. The man hesitated. He did not look like someone who liked sharing his problems, but he also looked like someone who had run out of choices. "My name is Daniel," he finally said. "These are my kids, Sarah, Mary, and little Tom. We lost our place 2 days ago. Our landlord sold the land and told us to leave. I've been looking for work, but I haven't found anything yet." Clara listened without saying a word. The children watched her with big, uncertain eyes. Daniel looked ashamed, even though he had done nothing wrong. His voice grew softer when he continued, "I didn't want them to sleep outside again, not tonight, so I brought them here, thinking maybe someone would know a place we could stay." Clara's throat tightened. She had left home expecting a simple start to her new life, but life wasn't simple, and she had never been the kind of woman who could pretend she didn't see pain when it stood right in front of her. "Have you eaten?" she asked. The children slowly shook their heads. Daniel looked away, almost embarrassed. "We'll be fine," he said. "I'll find something." Clara set her suitcase down and stepped closer. She didn't know Daniel, didn't know these children, and yet she felt responsible for them in a strange, deep way. Maybe because she knew what loneliness felt like. Maybe because she had prayed for a purpose when she left home. And now these 4 lost souls stood in front of her like an answer. "Where were you planning to stay tonight?" she asked. Daniel forced a small smile. "The wagon," he said. "We'll make do." Clara looked at the wagon again. It had no cover, no bedding, nothing to keep out the cold. She imagined these 3 children curled up in the back with only that thin blanket. She imagined Daniel staying awake all night just to make sure they didn't freeze. Something inside her pushed her. She grabbed the wagon's side rail and looked at the children. She did not know exactly what she was doing, but she knew one thing. They were not sleeping in this wagon tonight. "Get in my wagon now," she said suddenly, her voice firm and surprising even herself. Daniel blinked. "What?" She pointed toward her own small, covered wagon near the platform. "Get in," she repeated. "All of you." Daniel stared at her as if he didn't understand. "Ma'am, you don't even know us." "I know enough," she answered. "I know you're a father trying to keep his children safe. And I know those children shouldn't be hungry or sleeping in an open wagon." The older girl looked from her father to Clara. The little boy tugged at Daniel's shirt. "Papa, can we?" he whispered. Daniel swallowed hard. He looked torn between pride and desperation. A man with pride didn't want to accept help, but a father with hungry children didn't have the luxury of pride. Clara softened her voice. "Please," she said, "let me help. You don't owe me anything, just get in the wagon." Daniel finally nodded, though his eyes were shining with a mix of gratitude and disbelief. The children climbed in first, their tired bodies sinking into the soft blanket inside Clara's wagon. The youngest girl almost fell asleep the moment she sat down. Clara handed them a small basket of bread she had bought for her own journey. They hesitated, but she smiled and said, "Go on." They ate quietly but quickly, like children who had been hungry too long but were trying not to seem greedy. Daniel stayed outside for a moment, staring at the ground. Clara stepped next to him. "You did your best," she said quietly. He nodded without looking up. "I just want a chance to give them a home, even a small one." Clara looked at him fully then. She saw not a homeless man, but a father who loved his children more than anything. She felt something warm and strong inside her chest, an unexpected respect. She asked him, "Where would you go if you had the chance?" He let out a slow breath. "There's a ranch a few miles from here. I heard they might need a hand. If I can get there and they hire me, maybe we could start again." Clara nodded. "Then that's where you'll go." Daniel lifted his eyes to her, confused. But before he could ask, Clara walked to the front of her wagon and grabbed the reins. She looked back at him and said calmly, "Get in. I'll take you there myself." Daniel stared at her as if she were someone from another world. He didn't know her name yet, didn't know why she cared so much, but in that moment he understood one thing. Today was the first time in weeks he felt hope. He climbed in the wagon slowly, sitting beside his children. Clara sat in front, holding the reins with steady hands as she guided the horse forward. The sound of wheels rolling over the dirt road was soft and steady. The landscape stretched open in front of them, endless hills and golden grass swaying in the wind. The children leaned against their father. Daniel kept looking at Clara's back with quiet amazement. He wondered why a stranger would help him so completely. He wondered what kind of woman she was. Clara, meanwhile, stared ahead at the long road. She had come to this town expecting to start a new life with a stranger who had not even shown up for her. But maybe, she thought, maybe life had brought her here for a different reason. And as the wagon moved toward the empty horizon, Clara felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Purpose. Something inside her whispered that this was only the beginning. Samuel woke up before the sun rose, even though his body was tired from the long walk of the previous day. For a moment, he forgot where he was. He expected to see the broken shelter he used to sleep in with his children. He expected the cold wind, the hard ground, and the fear of not knowing what tomorrow might bring. But instead, he felt a warm blanket over his shoulders, and when he sat up, He saw the small but peaceful cabin around him. It was simple, but it felt like safety. And this safety came from a woman he had met less than a day ago, a woman who surprised him again and again with her kindness. He sat quietly, trying not to wake the children. They were all sleeping on the same bed, curled up like small kittens around each other. Their clothes had been washed the previous night, and Annie had placed them near the stove so they would dry faster. Samuel watched his children for a moment. All three looked calm for the first time in months. No shivers, no hunger, no fear. Just small, steady breaths. He felt something tighten in his chest, something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Annie came in softly from the other room, carrying a pot of warm water. She stopped when she saw him awake and gave him a small smile. It wasn't a loud smile. It wasn't a flirt. It was simply a kind smile that said she cared. Samuel nodded back, unsure what to say. He still didn't understand why she had helped him so quickly, why she had insisted he get into her wagon, why she had taken them all home without knowing anything about him. "You didn't sleep?" she whispered. "Not much," he answered softly. I'm not used to beds anymore." "You will be," she replied, and she said it like she already knew the future. She poured warm water into a wooden bowl and placed it near him. "Wash your face. Breakfast will be ready soon." He hesitated. No one had spoken to him like that in a long time, firm, caring, like he mattered. He washed quietly, feeling the warm water ease some of the exhaustion from his skin. While he cleaned up, Annie prepared breakfast. She moved around the small kitchen area in a calm rhythm, not saying much, but every small action showed she was thinking about all of them. She warmed bread near the stove. She cooked porridge with milk instead of water, something sweet instead of the bitter meals Samuel had been used to. She even set aside a small portion for each child, cutting fruit into slices like she knew children needed something soft to trust the day. The smell of food slowly filled the room, waking the children one by one. The youngest, Emma, blinked and sat up, rubbing her eyes. When she saw the table being prepared, she gasped softly, like she couldn't believe it. Her older brothers, Jack and Ben, woke up next. They sat up quickly, as if ready to run or defend themselves, but when they saw the gentle woman at the table, they relaxed. "Good morning," Annie said to them with a warm smile. None of them answered right away. They weren't used to adults speaking kindly, but Emma whispered, "Good morning," and that was enough to melt Annie's expression even more. "Come," she said. "You all will eat first." Samuel stood from the bed. "You don't have to serve us." "I know," she said simply, "but I want to." He didn't argue. He didn't know how to argue with kindness like this. The children sat at the small table, and Annie placed bowls in front of them. Their eyes grew wide at the steam rising from the porridge. Samuel could almost feel their thoughts. "Is it real? Can we eat this much? Are we allowed?" But when Annie nodded gently, they started eating. Slowly at first, then with growing comfort. Annie watched them with a soft expression, as if she enjoyed seeing them safe. Samuel moved closer but didn't sit. "Aren't you going to eat?" she asked. "I'll wait," he said. "They need it more." "Sit down, Samuel," she said in a tone that allowed no argument. "You are as human as they are?" He sat. She placed a bowl in front of him, and he ate quietly, trying not to show how hungry he truly was. Annie pretended not to notice how fast he finished, but she quietly added more to his bowl. He blinked in surprise but didn't refuse. After breakfast, Samuel helped clean up. He felt like he owed her everything already, though he didn't know how he could ever repay such kindness. He tried sweeping the floor, stacking firewood, even fixing the loose hinge on her door. Annie didn't stop him. She simply watched for a moment, then went outside to check the animals. When he finished the small chores, he stepped out to look for her. He found her near the barn, checking the wheel of her wagon. She looked up at him with a thoughtful expression. "Samuel," she said softly, "I need to ask something." He stiffened. Here it was. The moment people usually asked for something in return. Work, money, promises, things he could not give. "What is it?" he asked quietly. "Where were you going yesterday? When I found you on the roadside?" The question surprised him. Not because of the words, but because she asked it gently. She wasn't accusing. She wasn't judging. She was simply trying to understand. "We weren't going anywhere," he said after a long pause. "We were running. After my wife died, I couldn't keep the house. Everything went wrong. I lost my job. I tried to find work on farms, but no one wanted a man walking around with 3 children. So we kept walking. I thought maybe we'd find a place, someone who needed a worker, but..." He looked at the ground. Every door stayed closed. Annie's expression softened even more. She walked closer, stopping only a few steps from him. "You should have told someone," she said. "I did," he replied. But nobody listened. Annie looked away for a moment, thinking. "People forget how much a person can carry alone," she said quietly. She turned back to him. "I want you to stay here." The words hit him harder than hunger ever had. He blinked. "Stay?" "Yes." "Why?" he asked, almost whispering. Instead of answering directly, she looked at the barn, the field, the small patch of land she had been planning to work alone. "I can't take care of this place by myself. I need help. And your children need a home. You need rest." "It's too much," he said. "You barely know us." "I know enough," she replied. "I know you didn't abandon your children even when life became impossible. I know you're not lazy. I know your children trust you. And I know you walked until your boots broke rather than give up. That is enough for me." He didn't know what to say. He felt something in his chest tighten again, not fear this time, but something warm and confusing. "You don't owe us anything," he whispered. "I'm not doing this because I owe you," she said. "I'm doing it because I want to." He stepped back slightly, shaking his head. "I don't want to be a burden." "You won't be. You will help me here. You will work the fields. You will fix things. We will support each other. That is not a burden. That is a partnership." A partnership. He had forgotten what that word even felt like. At that moment, the children ran outside. Emma grabbed Samuel's hand. "Can we stay here, Papa?" she asked in a small voice. "It's warm, and I like the lady." Annie knelt down and smiled at the girl. "You can stay as long as you want." The boys looked at their father, waiting for his answer. He looked at them, then at Annie, then at the small farm around them. He thought about the roads he had walked, the cold nights, the long fears, and then he thought about the breakfast they just had, the clean bed, the kindness of a stranger who didn't treat them like trouble. "We'll stay," he said quietly. Emma cheered softly. The boys smiled. Annie stood up, looking relieved, almost grateful. For the rest of the day, they worked side by side. Samuel chopped wood. She carried water. The children helped feed the animals. Nobody ordered anyone. Nobody complained. For the first time in a long time, it felt like a home. But the biggest surprise came in the evening. After dinner, Annie stepped to the doorway and looked at the sky for a long moment, as if gathering courage. Then she walked back inside and stood in front of Samuel. "There is something you don't know about me," she said softly. He looked at her with calm curiosity. "What is it?" She took a slow breath. "I wasn't supposed to be alone. I came here as a mail-order bride, but the man who sent for me never showed up. He changed his mind." Samuel stared at her, stunned. She smiled sadly. "I thought I had made a mistake coming here. I thought I was alone in a strange land for nothing. But yesterday, when I saw you and your children, I felt like everything made sense. Samuel felt his heart beat differently. "What do you mean?" he asked. "I mean," she whispered, looking at the children sleeping on the bed. "Maybe I wasn't meant to marry the man who sent for me. Maybe I was meant to find you." The room felt warm, quiet, peaceful. But before Samuel could respond, Annie stepped back slightly. "Not now," she said softly. "Not yet. I don't want to rush anything. I just wanted you to know why I helped you so quickly." Samuel nodded slowly. He understood. She wasn't trying to claim anything. She wasn't pressuring him. She was just being honest. The night grew deeper. The cabin lights dimmed, and Samuel realized something he hadn't felt in years. For the first time, tomorrow didn't scare him. The next morning came with a quiet, soft light rising over the wide plains. Mary had barely slept. She kept replaying the moment when she saw Samuel standing in that broken shed, holding his small son in his weak arms, doing everything to protect his children even when he had nothing left for himself. She felt something heavy yet meaningful forming inside her chest, almost like a responsibility she had not expected, but one she was ready to face. She got out of the wagon early and started fixing breakfast over a small fire. Something warm, something simple, something that would give the children strength. When she stepped back inside the barn to wake them, she found Samuel already awake, sitting against a post with his eyes half open. His son and daughters were still asleep beside him, using his worn coat as a blanket. Samuel tried to stand up when he saw her, but his legs trembled. "You don't need to get up," Mary said softly. "Just sit. I'm making food." Samuel lowered himself slowly. "You don't need to do all this. You already helped more than anyone ever would." Mary shook her head. "You're not a burden. You're a father doing his best." Samuel didn't reply, but the way his eyes weakened showed that her words touched something inside him. She went to wake the children. Anna, the oldest daughter, sat up slowly and rubbed her eyes. Jacob, the little boy, clung to his father with sleepy confusion. Lily, the youngest, blinked up at Mary like she was seeing an angel. Mary carried Lily in her arms while helping the others stand. They followed her out to the fire where she had warm porridge ready. The girls sat quietly, eating as if they had not tasted warm food in weeks. Jacob ate too fast and coughed, and Mary gently slowed him down. Samuel watched all of it silently, as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing. His face held a tired kind of gratitude, the kind that forms after long years of struggling alone. After breakfast, Mary took a deep breath and made the words come out in a steady voice. "I'm taking you all with me to town today." Samuel stiffened. "To the sheriff?" "No," she said gently. "To get clothes, food, a doctor to check the children, and maybe work for you." Samuel blinked at her like she had said something impossible. "I don't understand. Why are you doing all this?" "Because I want to," she replied, "and because no one deserves to be left alone when they're trying their hardest." Samuel lowered his gaze. Unable to speak, she helped them climb into her wagon. The children sat close together, holding hands. Samuel hesitated before climbing up, like he didn't feel worthy of sitting among them. Mary reached out her hand. He took it slowly, and she helped him settle in before taking the reins. The road to town was long but peaceful. Mary drove carefully while the children watched the world around them with quiet excitement. None of them had been in a wagon for a long time. The little boy pressed his forehead against the wood railing, staring at the open fields like everything was new. Halfway to town, Samuel spoke. "You're supposed to meet your husband today." Mary tightened her grip around the reins for a moment. "Yes. What will he think when he sees all of us?" Mary swallowed. She had been thinking the same thing. She had signed up to be a mail-order bride because she believed starting a family was her best chance at building a life of her own. The man she was supposed to marry, Mr. Dawson, had written letters describing himself as patient, practical, and in need of a companion. But she had no idea how he would react to her bringing a homeless father and 3 children right into town with her. Mary took a slow breath. If he is a good man, he will understand. And if he doesn't? Samuel asked quietly. Then he isn't the man I hoped he would be. Samuel said nothing after that. He just sat with his hands folded tightly, as if afraid to take up too much space. When the wagon rolled into town, people stopped what they were doing and stared. A woman dressed neatly in a traveling dress, arriving with a tired father and 3 fragile-looking children, was not something they saw every day. Whispers rose around them. Some women tilted their heads with curiosity. Some men frowned like they wanted to ask questions. The children shrank into each other. Mary lifted her chin and kept her steady posture. She brought them first to the general store. Mrs. Green, the owner, opened her mouth to speak, but paused when she saw Samuel stepping down slowly, holding Jacob by the hand. The girls followed behind. Their clothes were thin and dusty. Mary spoke confidently. I need warm clothes for all 3 children, and boots. Mrs. Green blinked. Yes, of course, and right away. Mary turned to Samuel. Go inside with them. Let them choose. Samuel hesitated. Are you sure? This looks expensive. I'll handle it, she said firmly. Inside, the children touched the clothes carefully, like they were afraid to ruin something. The little girl lifted a small dress with bright blue stitches and looked at Mary, silently asking if it was allowed. Mary smiled and nodded. Lily's eyes sparkled for the first time since Mary had met her. When they finished, Mary paid for the clothes without hesitation. She saw Samuel's jaw tighten, not out of anger, but out of a painful kind of humility. He wasn't used to anyone helping him like this. Next, she took them to the doctor. The children were checked, given medicine, and treated for small injuries. The doctor looked at Mary with soft eyes. You did a good thing bringing them in. Mary didn't reply. She felt her heart growing heavier, knowing the next part of the day would be the most difficult. She had to meet Mr. Dawson. She led the family back to the wagon. Samuel sensed her tension and gently asked, Where to next? I have someone I must meet, she said quietly. When she reached the Dawson house, a neat, well-built place with a strong fence, she felt her stomach tighten. Mr. Dawson was already waiting outside, tall and neat in his clothes, holding a letter she had written. He smiled politely but froze when he noticed Samuel and the children stepping down from the wagon. His face shifted, first confusion, then concern, then something sharper. Miss Mary, he said, trying to keep his voice calm. Who are these people? Mary stood tall. A family I helped on the road. They had no home. Mr. Dawson raised a brow. And why are they with you? Because I chose to bring them, she said simply. He glanced again at Samuel's worn boots, the children's tired eyes, and Lily holding Mary's hand. This isn't a charity house, he said carefully. I expected a wife, someone ready to start a new life with me, not someone bringing strangers into it. Mary's heartbeat slowed. She felt the weight of his words, but she also felt something else, clarity. She looked at Samuel and the children standing close together. Their eyes were scared. They didn't want to cause problems. They didn't even want to be seen. They were just trying to survive. Then she looked at Mr. Dawson, who stood with neat boots, clean clothes, and a comfortable porch behind him, yet no softness in his tone. Mary lifted her chin. If helping a father and 3 children bothers you, then I am not the woman for you. Mr. Dawson blinked, surprised. Are you rejecting me? No, she said. I am choosing what feels right. Samuel stepped back as if ready to leave, not wanting to be the reason she lost her chance at a new life. But Mary stepped toward him instead. "You don't have to go anywhere." Mr. Dawson frowned. "Well then, I suppose this arrangement won't work." Mary didn't argue. She just nodded and turned away. She helped the children climb back into the wagon. Samuel tried to protest. "You didn't have to do that. You shouldn't give up your future for us." Mary looked at him with steady eyes. "My future is mine to choose, and no future built on leaving a good man and 3 innocent children behind would ever feel right." Samuel stared at her like she was someone he had never imagined meeting in real life. Mary took the reins again, and the wagon rolled away from the house that could have been her home. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. Her heart already knew she had made the right choice. The children leaned against her during the ride, warm in their new clothes. Samuel sat beside her in silence, his eyes full of a quiet storm. Gratitude, guilt, disbelief, and something deeper he wasn't ready to name. For the first time since she had arrived in the West, Mary felt sure about her steps. She didn't know what would happen next, but she knew one thing: she would not abandon them, and whatever came in Part 4 would change all their lives forever. The morning sun had only just begun to rise when Clara Wells stepped off the eastbound stagecoach and onto the dusty road leading into the small frontier town of Red Creek. She was tired from days of travel, her clothes creased, her gloves dusty, and her eyes showing a mix of worry and hope. Clara was a mail-order bride, promised to a rancher she had never met, a man who had written kind letters and spoken about a good future. She came with hope in her heart, even though she did not know what exactly waited for her. She had left behind everything familiar, trusting that maybe out here in the West she could finally find a place to belong. But as she stepped farther into town, her attention was drawn to something unexpected. Near the side of the general store, beside an empty water barrel, she saw a man sitting on the ground with his back against the wall. His head was lowered, his clothes were worn, and his boots looked old enough to fall apart with one wrong step. 3 small children sat with him, 2 girls and a little boy. They were thin, dusty, and clearly tired. But what struck Clara most was the way they stayed close to him, as if afraid the world might take him from them. Clara slowed down. She was not a woman who ignored suffering, especially when children were involved. She watched as the man tried to tie worn shoes on his youngest daughter, but the shoelace snapped. He sighed softly in defeat, then attempted to fix it with a piece of string. His hands moved gently, carefully, showing a man who knew how to handle children with love. Yet everything else about him showed struggle, exhaustion, hunger, and some kind of deep sadness. Clara hesitated for only a moment. She was supposed to meet her future husband at the sheriff's office. She was supposed to walk straight there and start her new life. That was the plan. But the sight of the hungry children pulled her in another direction. She approached slowly. The little boy saw her first. He tugged on his father's sleeve. "Pa, someone's coming." The man looked up quickly, as though waking from a long and heavy thought. When his eyes met Clara's, she saw humility, a quiet gentleness, and also shame. Shame for being seen in such a state. "I'm sorry, ma'am," he said softly, moving to stand even though he looked weak. "We're not in your way. We'll be gone soon." "You don't need to move," Clara said, trying to sound calm and kind. "Are you all right? You look tired." The man swallowed, clearly uncomfortable with attention. "We're fine. Just resting a bit. We walked a long way." Clara looked at the children. Their faces were thin, their clothes faded, and their eyes filled with a tired hope that hurt her heart. "How long have you been walking?" she asked. 3 days, he answered quietly. Clara's breath caught. No person, let alone 3 young children, should walk that far without proper shelter or food. "What happened to your home?" she asked gently. He hesitated, then said, "Storm destroyed it. Lost everything. Been trying to find work, but no one wants a man with kids following him." Clara felt something in her chest tighten. She knew loneliness. She knew fear of the unknown. But she also knew kindness. She could not, in good conscience, leave them here. "What's your name?" she asked. "Daniel," he replied, touching his hat politely, though it was worn thin. "Daniel Hart. These are my children, Mary, Alice, and little Tommy." Clara kneeled so she could see the children better. "Hello, Mary, Alice, Tommy." She smiled softly. "Are you hungry?" The oldest daughter, Mary, opened her mouth to answer but closed it again, as if afraid to admit the truth. Daniel quickly said, "They're fine." But Clara interrupted, "Sir, they are not fine, and neither are you." Daniel looked away, as though embarrassed to be seen so clearly. She straightened and took a deep breath. She didn't know Daniel. She didn't know his history. But something inside her told her he was a good father doing his best. She also knew she could not ignore them. "Where are you heading?" Clara asked. Daniel shook his head slowly. "Anywhere that'll take a man who's got no money and 3 little ones." Clara didn't think. She simply acted. "Get in my wagon," she said firmly. Daniel blinked in surprise. "Ma'am? What?" "Get in my wagon now," Clara repeated, her voice calm but commanding. "You and your children." Daniel frowned, confused. "Why would you help us? You don't even know us." Clara looked at the children again, the tired eyes, the empty stomachs, the way they clung to their father. Something about them tore at her heart. "Because I can see you need help," she said, "and because I can't walk away from 3 hungry children. Now, please, get in my wagon." Daniel opened his mouth to argue again, but then Tommy's stomach growled loudly. The little boy blushed and hid behind his father's leg. Clara's heart broke. "Sir," Clara continued softly, "I know what it feels like to be alone. I know what it feels like when life keeps pushing you down. Let me help you, at least for today." Mary looked at her father hopefully. Alice whispered, "Please, Pa. The lady is nice." Daniel finally nodded, though his pride clearly struggled with the decision. "All right," he said in a low voice. "Just for today." "Thank you, ma'am." Clara smiled warmly. "Good. Come with me." She led them to her wagon parked near the road. It was not fancy, but it was clean, with a small trunk of supplies, a few blankets, and space for her luggage. Daniel lifted the children inside, then climbed in after them. Clara handed each child a small piece of bread from her travel basket. They accepted it with quiet gratitude, eating slowly as though they were afraid to finish too quickly. Clara watched them for a moment, realizing how strange this situation must look. A mail-order bride bringing a homeless family into her wagon on the very day she was supposed to meet her future husband. But something inside her whispered that this was the right thing to do. She climbed into the driver's seat and tapped the reins. The horses started moving down the road. Daniel watched her carefully. "Ma'am, what's your name?" "Clara Wells," she answered. He nodded slowly. "Thank you, Miss Wells. I don't know why you'd help strangers like us, but thank you." "You're not strangers anymore," she said softly. "Not to me." The wagon rolled past shops, past townsfolk who stared in confusion, past the sheriff's office where Clara's future husband was supposed to be waiting. Clara saw the sheriff's deputy standing outside holding a letter. He looked around as if searching for someone, probably her. She looked away quickly before he saw her. Daniel noticed her tense expression. "Are we going somewhere far?" Clara hesitated. Her heart beat faster. The truth was simple. She was supposed to go meet the man she had promised to marry. But something inside her told her she needed to help these children first. That meeting could wait. "We're just going somewhere safe," Clara said quietly. "A place where you can rest. That's all." Daniel didn't question further. His children leaned against him, full for the first time in days. Tommy rested his head on his father's shoulder. Alice yawned. Mary closed her eyes, trusting Clara without hesitation. Clara watched them from the corner of her eye and felt something shift inside her, something warm, something new. She didn't know why she felt so protective of them already, but she did. And she couldn't shake the feeling that whatever future she had believed she was coming here for was about to change completely.